You wrote, blues as a genre isn't dying. It's the last of the true, honest, muddy Mississippi blues characters that I'm worried about. So you care about the folks who lived it, produced it, and kept it alive. And how does that fit in with your love of blues? Or?
Well, it becomes so personal and it becomes emotional, when some of these passings occur. That's the problem I keep saying, and this is kind of a joke, but I need younger friends. It's like it's rough. When you really make friends with guys who are this old.
And you are friends with these guys.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you
awesome.
just their families. You hang out. You get invited to things. You get to travel. Like for a while, I was really helping out Big George Brock a lot. He's from here, but lives in St. Louis. The change in the economy. A lot of things changed to not really make it so feasible for at least the last few years to really go overseas, but I take them overseas, and I've seen other tour managers and how in some cases they treated or dealt with the bluesmen who were with them, because I'd be at the same festival.
Sure.
And to them it's strictly a business arrangement. They were being paid to go, which I wasn't, but that's on me. But they were being paid to go, which is fine, but then basically they got them there, the show's done, they don't have to worry about it. Right. Meanwhile, and I won't name names, but an elderly bluesman's being given shots of grappa, which he didn't know what it was, and becomes violently ill for a day after that. Right. When frankly somebody should have been watching them.
Sure.
And I'm not saying you need to babysit people, but I mean you're there for more than just business. You're there for personal things.
Right.
With Big George, have to make sure he took his shots because he's diabetic, and his different medicines, and go in the hotel room after him to make sure that everything didn't get left.
Sure.
Which one time he did. He forgot his hats. So we had one kind of ratty hat. We had to do the whole first week of a tour in the UK. He's wearing all these great, killer, incredible color suits and all this.
God.
And there's the travel hat because he left the hats at the hotel. But that was my responsibility. And then you, if possible, get communication back to their families and things. And I don't know, it's just a really personal thing. And I just feel like people shouldn't take on those kind of responsibilities if they're not willing to do it 100%. Right. You're dealing with guys who have health issues or are up in years. Many of them can't read or don't have difficulty with reading, or maybe they can't even see well. Like Big George's eyes are failing, for example. And if you're going to do it, sorry about that. If you're going to do that kind of thing, it's just, to me, it's like you're either in or out. And if you're in, then you really have to treat it like this is your parent who's with you, or your grandparent, or your best friend, or something like that.
You also followed that quote up with, blues as a genre now. It used to be a music and a culture. And I mean, that's kind of a follow-up on what you just said, but how would you distinguish between a genre now and a music and a culture past tense?
Well, first let me say that, it's easy to to write something like that, and I'm sure some people are like, what a blues snob, or something. But really all I mean by that is that, anybody can play blues, and I've got no issue with that. I mean, I go see acts all the time, or certainly before I lived here, who they play great blues music, or they're just great musicians, or they're just great people on top of being musicians.
Right.
But it is just not the same as someone who grew up in it, and it is as much a part of them and their life as everything else. I mean, breathing, playing blues, it's the same thing to them. They do it because that's what keeps them alive.
What positive changes have you seen since arriving in Clarksdale almost a decade ago? If you don't mind if I switch a little bit to our geographical environment, that the blues is still staying alive or being fostered in.
I love talking about Clarksdale, so that's not a problem at all. I moved here, I bought a house here in March 2002, moved here in May 2002, opened the store in July 2002. And the biggest, really two changes have happened since then. The first one came relatively quickly, within the first 5 years or less. More and more people started moving here, or from afar buying property here. Some did things with the property, some a little tougher as we hit the negative economy. But there was a lot of outside interest and investment, and it seemed to be building. And I'm not saying it's because I moved here or something. It certainly wasn't because of that, but it seemed like that was the time frame it started happening.
Right.
Everybody for their own reasons, I'm sure. That wasn't that much of a surprise to me, because I see the appeal. Again, I'm an outsider who's now been inside, so I kind of sort of see it from both perspectives. What has been, I don't want to say a surprise, but just really heartening lately is that the last 4 or 5 businesses to open within a block of mine have been local. Local people opening it, local people running it, local money behind it. When I first moved here, it was exactly the opposite. You had people literally running out of downtown, things closing. It seemed like every couple months, either moving out on the highway or just closing, or a lot of people moving to Oxford, frankly.
Right.
It was almost like a mass exodus, and some people who didn't talked about it. Also, a couple of stores opened up second locations in Oxford, for example. I think with the intent of ultimately moving over there, which I think one did. But now you're seeing, a couple new restaurants, a couple new art galleries, and other things going on. And it's local investment, local accommodations being opened up. But you still have folks from outside investing or showing interest or coming here and doing projects, which is great. And I think that's only going to continue to build. But without having truly local investment and interest, we can only make this thing get so big.
Right.
There's a reason why Juke Joint Festival continues to grow, and it's the combination of local involvement and tourists and media from afar.
Right.
So it's gotta have both.
What could we do better in this area to honor the already passed and maybe soon to pass bluesmen? And what could we do better to maybe promote cultural tourism?
Well, first off, we have a great Mississippi Blues Trail marker system that started after the Year of the Blues in 2003, and being in Coahoma County. And
also
the
year that you came here. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, year after, yeah. And I remember, I'll be honest, the Year of the Blues I thought was kind of a joke. It just seemed like this isn't going to do a thing. It's a whole bunch of reissues coming out, which I appreciated that as a blues fan. But
sure.
The Martin Scorsese week of documentaries, hit or miss, but still very high profile. And a couple of nights were stunning. Like the J.B. Lenore segment was just killer. But I really kind of thought, okay, this is just that kind of thing that happens when somebody with a big name gets involved.
Right.
One of the greatest things that come out of it, and it started with the previous governor, the Blues Commission, but then it was carried on, I have to say, by the current governor. And they kept the Blues Commission going. They eventually figured out, got their footing, what they wanted to do, and that's the Blues Trail marker system. And it's really great because they're all over the state. They're beautiful markers. They're very informative. They have little events when they put one up, which brings the community and tourists together. And of course, being in Clarksdale and Coahoma County, we get a whole bunch of them because everybody's from here.
Right.
So it really works out great for us. We also have a Walk of Fame here in Clarksdale. That's cool. There's a Sun House marker right up front of my store. So I kind of feel like, from a marker standpoint, aside from a couple of headstones I'd like to see for some bluesmen that just their families didn't have the money and we need to get something done for them, I think a lot of that is covered. My big thing is, and this is, again, goes back to sort of the hidden history aspect of Mississippi blues for me, which is that there's this living history. I want to bring, bluesmen and juke joint owners and anybody involved in that kind of a way, in a sort of a cultural, musical sense, bring them the flowers while they can still smell them.
Right.
Because, markers are awesome. And it is great when there's a marker, like Super Chicken just got one. A marker for somebody who's still living, is a nice thing. But I want to make sure that we don't have juke joints closing because their roofs leak, or bluesmen who just can't get gigs because, quite frankly, they're too real. Robert Wolfman Belfour, watch the paper in Memphis. How often does he play in Memphis? That's where he lives. He's from Mississippi, but he plays much more down at Red's Lounge here or at our festivals. Now he'll play around the world and is appreciated. But there's a guy that, if I could see one thing happen this year, it'd be that somebody up there would give him a meaningful gig, a weekly gig in Memphis.
Sure.
Because that man just wants to play, and it is just an education every time. But I guess that's how I feel about it. I think markers and things of that nature, and also blues education for kids, I think that's very important.
Right.
But there are things being done for that. I would just like to see more authentic blues venues that are able to continually run with live music and afford to do it without losing their shirts, and more opportunities for the guys that are just a little bit outside of popular music and a little bit outside of being able to market themselves. Another guy is Cadillac John, who's in the book. 84 years old, turned 84 the same day I turned 44. And just a sweet man, but he almost can't get a gig. People have to find gigs for him. Here's a real deal guy, If he could go over to Europe and spend 2 weeks, he could make some real money, But it's slowly expanded to where Ground Zero Blues Club does Wednesday to Saturday every week, plus special events. Red's Lounge minimally is doing Friday and Saturday. Well, the last 5 weeks, including this coming Sunday, he's done Sunday night. I don't know if I can say that's every Sunday yet, because he won't say that, but that's what he's doing. So right now, for Sunday nights, I'd absolutely recommend the first thing people try is Red's Lounge on Sunflower. On Monday nights, actually, it's not well promoted, and it just tells me I need to promote it better from my vantage point too. But Bluesberry Cafe has Sean Apple every Monday, and it's actually awesome because musicians will show up, like Watermelon Slim will show up every other week, sit in for some songs. I didn't go last night, but the week before, like Super Chicken came, played one of his diddly bows.
Awesome.
So it's 7 o'clock, it's spaghetti night, so you can get a little bit of inexpensive food and hear blues until probably about 11 o'clock. Also, that's Tuesday, Hambone Art Gallery, of course, Stan Street. And once you hit Wednesday, you start having some multiple things happening with Ground Zero Blues Club. And as you get into the week, Medidi and Rust and places like that will have things. And of course, Reds on the weekend. One of the questions I get as well, because you're right, people do come in on those off nights, but then I get folks who come in on a Friday or a Saturday. I talk to them in the store. Well, which one should I go to? You give them the options. It's like, are you crazy? It's like you came all this way and you're only going to go to Ground Zero or Reds.
Exactly.
It's like they're a block apart. Go to both. And Teo just opened the Den and is doing music early on Saturdays. Go there first. It's just crazy not to experience it. And with a place like a Reds Lounge, just an authentic juke joint, where God knows what's going to happen on a given night. And then you have Ground Zero Blues Club, which is a big Mississippi blues club, with reliable hours, which is nice.
Right.
It's two sides of the same coin. It's going to be an authentic experience, but it's going to be a couple different, types of experience.
Well, one final question, given Roger Stolle's multimedia skill set and your M for Mississippi documentary, which is fabulous. I loved how quirky it was, love how it began and ended, and now your hidden history of the Mississippi Blues. What's your next project, or do you have one in mind, or do you want to build on either one of those?
Well, of course, I have projects that are ongoing in my Cathead Blues Store, Juke Joint Festival, things like that. The column I do for Blues Review. Jeff Conkle, who is also, and we apologize for being on screen so much, but he was also an M for Mississippi.
No, it was excellent.
We're talking about doing our next documentary, start shooting hopefully in July, which will be blues, juke joint, Mississippi Delta oriented. Is the best I can tell you at this point. Also, I have not released any albums on my label in a while. I'm hoping to get into that. It may be late in the year or next year. I'm just trying to get finances together in this economy and such.
Right.
And
Big
frankly,
George Brock you released. Was that one of the first you released?
Yeah. I put out several things on Big George, one of which has gone out of print now. So I would like to bring that back as sort of a special edition kind of thing. And frankly, I'd love to do another book. I really enjoyed working on it. There's so much more to write about. I mean, there were chapters I had to cut just to make this book the length it needed to be. So to me, there's so many past and present and even a few future stories to write about this place that you just never really run out of material.
Right. Well, Roger Stolle, appreciate you visiting with the Delta Bohemians. And folks out there in radio land, fellow Delta Bohemians, you have seen an iconic interview, not because the interviewer is iconic,
or the interviewee.
But the interviewee is iconic, and Roger's made a demonstrative and huge difference in the Mississippi Delta, and we look forward to much more good work to come. So we appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Feeling down and out. I wanna go back home. Feeling down and out. I need to get back home. I'm catching too much hell.